Cracking can occur due to high surface free energy of droplets. As it is very clear that when two immiscible phases are brought together, the surface free energy increases. So when surface free energy increases, the particles or the dispersed phase globules will have more tendency to come closer to each other. And because of their closer interaction, coalescence will be seen, and when the coalescence goes on building up, it ultimately leads to cracking. So this is the reason why we say that the surface free energy has to be kept under check. Second reason why the cracking can occur is due to weaker interfacial mechanical film. Generally, emulsions have to be shaken in order to bring in right miscibility of both the immiscible phases. So whenever the particles are shaken, it may deform itself. So when the interfacial film is formed flexibly by a surfactant, the particle irregularity will be avoided. So because of which also you can see that cracking can occur whenever the interfacial film which is existing between two immiscible phases is weaker. So acacia has an advantage, just to mention here that acacia is the choice because it has a tendency to maintain a very flexible monomolecular film at the interface. The third reason by which cracking can occur is because of more interdroplet attraction. In other words, because of the electrostatic forces which is acting between the dispersed globules or the dispersed particles. So the interparticular attraction should be minimum, because once the particles are getting attracted to each other, it leads to coalescence. So basically the charges on the particle should be managed in such a way that the particles have good repulsion, wherein stability can be better. The next reason why cracking can be seen is because of incompatibility. Now incompatibility is a very broader umbrella term, wherein it could be because of any physico-chemical interaction between the multiple ingredients which we generally take in formulating an emulsion. So one has to be, with lot of care, the selection of ingredients has to be done while strategizing the formulation of an emulsion. One example to be quoted here is selecting a solvent system wherein water is also miscible and oil also is miscible. If we have a common solvent system, we will see that it leads to formation of one phase system which will no longer remain as an emulsion. So we can see that cracking can occur due to multiple factors which we pool under the term incompatibility. One more example to be quoted here is using anionic surfactant instead of cationic, or vice versa. So one has to be very careful in selecting the right ingredients to make a stable formulation. The next reason for cracking is a microbial degradation of emulsifier. Now one example to mention of gum emulsions wherein gums are used as emulsifying agents. Now it is a very well known fact that natural products or natural gums are carbohydrate based materials. So they are a means of attracting microbial growth on long standing. In case there is a microbial attack, the emulsifier concentration will get decreased, because of which the interfacial tension which was under check would be unmanaged and leading to separation of both the phases which were kept together by the emulsifier. So microbial degradation can also be one of the reasons for cracking of emulsions. And another reason which can be quoted with regard to cracking is preparation of concentrated emulsions. That is, if we are not careful enough to maintain the ratio of internal phase to external phase or the dispersed phase to dispersion medium, then it leads to cracking. The maximum concentration of dispersed phase should be not beyond 60% of the total product. If this ratio, this is also on the higher side, if it is crossing 60%, definitely the system is going to crack. Now having understood what is cracking, what are the reasons which are responsible for cracking, we also have to give the remedy. Now remedy is, in other words, what can be the approach to overcome cracking. And under this we have multiple approaches. One among them is adding right type of emulsifying agent. So whenever a formula is developed, one has to be very critical in selecting the right type of emulsifying agent out of a broad pool of emulsifiers. Emulsifiers can be of natural origin, synthetic origin or semi-synthetic origin. So one has to be wise to select the right type of emulsifier in which we will be able to establish the right stability of the product. The second approach could be avoid addition of ingredients causing precipitation of emulgent. That is, when we are selecting other additives, we have to be careful that there should not be any sort of incompatibility between the ingredients or between the ingredients and the emulsifier, which might ultimately lead to precipitation of emulsifier. Now emulsifier is a stabilizer in this system. If the emulsifier itself is been precipitating out, then the system will no longer remain stable. For that reason, we need to avoid adding any such ingredient which may bring about precipitation of emulgent. The third approach would be avoid addition of a common solvent. So we have to be careful not to select a common solvent in which both the phases are soluble. This leads to instability. And already it is discussed that what is the relevance of microbial growth. So we need to protect our prepared product, that is emulsion, from microbial growth. This can be attained by addition of a suitable and an optimum concentration of the right preservative. So this has to be established during pre-formulation studies, which is the right for preservative to be selected and what has to be the optimum concentration to be added to this preparation. And finally, care should also be taken with storage of temperature. Storage temperature, that is, it should be in a cool place. Neither the temperature should be freezing nor it should be high. The reason being that if the temperature is high, it brings about cracking because the viscosity of the system will drop. When the viscosity of system will drop, the dispersed particles will have more tendency to come and attract each other or interact with each other, thereby building coalescence. And that is the reason why high temperature is not to be selected. Similarly, on the other side, freezing should not be done because under frozen conditions, when ice formation is seen, the dispersed phase particles may become irregular in shape. So this may again bring in deformability, or this can bring in instability in the system. So if we are wise enough that at different stages of preparation we are taking care with all the aspects as specified, we can establish a stable emulsion having good shelf life. The second problem with respect to stability is creaming of emulsion. Now creaming is a milder kind of problem as compared to cracking. The major difference between creaming and cracking is creaming is the first step wherein a cream layer will be formed when the dispersed particles, globules are coming close to each other. Now the cream layer can be seen forming on top of the preparation or on the bottom. So whenever a creamy layer is seen, the creamy layer can be redispersed on shaking. So that is why it is said that creaming problem is milder compared to cracking. But if the cream goes on building up with respect to time, then ultimately the system will appear as two clear layers. One is a thick cream and the other a transparent volume of the fluid. This on shaking will not redisperse, and then ultimately creaming has led to cracking. So creaming is the first step, which is a reversible phenomena. Cracking happens after creaming has intensified and it is an irreversible phenomena. So when we talk about the problem of creaming, we say that it is not a major problem as compared to cracking. So here the basic definition to understand creaming is wherein separation of dispersed phase or globule is seen in the form of concentrated layer on the surface or at the bottom of the emulsion preparations. Now generally we see on the top because oils are the dispersed phase and we generally prefer oil in water type of systems. So when oil is the dispersed phase, they are lighter and that happen to form a layer on top of the emulsion preparation. So they basically show cream layer is generally seen on the top or the surface, and oils will have a tendency to move upward. One very normal example which we can quote here is naturally is milk. Milk is a natural emulsion. So emulsion, why we call it milk? Because basically when you boil and cool the milk, you will see a creamy layer being formed on the surface of milk, whereas once it is shaken, it will redisperse. Similarly, creaming is because oils are less in density and they will move upward and form a cream layer on the surface. Now, uniform redispersion of emulsion can be attained by shaking even if the preparation shows creaming. So, this is easy to bring it back to its original form by shaking. So, that is why in labels or on labels of emulsions, an auxiliary condition is mandatory: shake well before use. So, you may see that when an emulsion preparation is bottled and labeled, we generally write the auxiliary condition: shake well before use. One more aspect to be understood with creaming is creaming ultimately leads to cracking, as already I specified this. Now creaming is a milder problem, but if it goes on building up, then ultimately it leads to cracking, and here even on shaking, the cracked emulsion cannot be brought back to its original shape. Now in order to understand better the concept of creaming, we can say that creaming is governed by Stokes' law. Already we have discussed Stokes' law when we were talking about biphasic liquid dosage forms, solid in liquid type, that is suspensions. So we can say that in case of creaming aspect of emulsions, again it is supported by Stokes' law. The Stokes' law can be written as V is equal to d square into rho 1 minus rho 2 into g upon 18 eta, wherein V is nothing but terminal velocity of a spherical particle. D stands for diameter of the particle. Here it refers to the dispersed phase particle size. Rho 1 and rho 2 are the density difference. Rho stands for density and 1 and 2 represents dispersed phase and the dispersion medium respectively. So difference of density is rho 1 minus rho 2. G stands for acceleration due to gravity and eta is viscosity of the dispersion medium. So as the equation is clear that if a particle which is dispersed, if it has velocity, that is movement, and how the movement is going to be controlled. If movement is more, the particle interaction will be more. When particle interaction is more, particle building will be faster. And if particle building is faster, ultimately cracking of emulsion is inevitable. So for that reason, we have to understand how the velocity of the particle is governed. It is directly dependent on diameter of the dispersed particle. So basically it says that, or it can be understood as, larger the particle size, more will be the velocity of the movement of the particle. So for that reason, if we have to attain a good stable emulsion, the size of the particle as dispersed phase globules has to be controlled. An ideal size is that 50% of the dispersed phase should be in the particle size of 0.5 to 5 micrometer. I repeat, it should be between 0.5 to 5 micrometer, and to some extent particle size up to 10 micrometer is tolerable. But if more than that size particle is seen in the preparation, then creaming and cracking will be seen. So as per Stokes' law, velocity is directly related to the particle size. That is why shearing force or mechanical energy is required for preparation of emulsion to control the particle size. We can attain the desired particle size by a homogenizer when emulsions are prepared in large scale, but when an emulsion is prepared in lab scale using a mortar and pestle, the trituration technique is sufficient to incorporate the mechanical energy which is required for limited quantity of oil, water, gum forming a stable emulsion. As per Stokes' law, velocity is also directly related to difference of densities between the disperse phase and the dispersion medium. The disperse phase and dispersion medium density difference should be minimum. Stability of emulsion will be better. If the difference is more, then the problem comes in, and the problem can be seen either in the form of creaming or cracking. G is acceleration due to gravity and eta is viscosity. So, viscosity with relation to velocity has an inverse relationship. So, that is the reason why gum emulsions have one more advantage, that they are viscosity imparting agents. So, we need to have the right viscosity in this system. One concept of viscosity building is because of the viscous nature of the oil itself, but we can also bring in an additional aspect of building viscosity by adding an emulsifying agent, for example gums, which help in building viscosity. If the viscosity of system is such that it has a pourable consistency and it is better, it will hold the particles segregated because of viscosity, and the particle movement will be minimum, and when the particle movement is minimum, particle interaction will be stunted. When particle interaction is stunted, particle building or coalescence will be bare minimum, because of which stability will be better. So, with this concept, one can establish the validity of having stable emulsions or the influence of all the parameters involved in Stokes' equation on stability of emulsions. So, the reasons for creaming, as we have already briefed, we can just point it out again, that it is because of inappropriate particle size. Recommended particle size is generally 0.5 to 5 micrometer. If the particle range goes above this, we will see the problem of creaming. The second aspect is right viscosity of the dispersion medium, as already mentioned by Stokes' equation, inverse relationship. More the viscosity, better will be the stability. So, viscosity has to be kept optimum for having stable preparations. One more reason why we see creaming is difference of density. As already specified, to overcome the problem, difference should be bare minimum. And finally, it is the temperature. Temperature is something which will affect viscosity. If viscosity is affected, because with temperature the viscosity will drop. When viscosity drops, the tendency of particle movement increases, and when particle movement increases, the instability problem is seen. Now, to order to overcome the problem of creaming, we can have different strategical approaches. The first and foremost is have the appropriate globule size, and one can attain this by using a machine called homogenizer. This will help to get the particle size in the desired range of 0.5 to 5 micrometer. Second approach is using the concept wherein we can decrease the density difference between both the phases, and this can be attained so that the stability of emulsions can be better. The next approach can be increasing the viscosity of the dispersion medium, by which we can see to it that when the viscosity of the dispersion medium is better, we can take into account that stability will be better. And the influence of temperature, we can understand that when the temperature is optimum, neither high and nor it is freezing, the stability of emulsions will be maintained. The last concept with respect to stability of emulsion is phase inversion. By definition, to understand what is phase inversion, it is basically the changeover of the emulsion type. We have already understood while talking the definition aspect of emulsions that emulsions can be oil in water type or water in oil type. If we have intended and we have achieved preparation of oil in water type initially, and on storage, if the system changes vice versa to water in oil type, then we call it as phase inversion. The system may look homogeneous, but It has lost its value because we intended the preparation to be oil in water type, and ultimately the preparation has become water in oil type. Now how is this possible? This is because, as already specified, the optimum concentration of dispersed phase should not exceed 60% of the preparation capacity. When the particles come closer, it will build together. Emulsifier which is present may not be able to hold the particles segregated, and because of which the disperse phase ratio may cross 60% value, and that becomes dispersion medium, and the dispersion medium becomes disperse phase, because of which the phases are getting inverted from dispersed to dispersion medium and vice versa. When this kind of change is seen, we call it as phase inversion. There could be multiple reasons by which phase inversion may appear. Now, phase inversion can occur because of change in phase volume ratio. Each phase has to contribute a particular value or a volume with respect to final preparation. So we say that if the dispersed phase is to be remain as dispersed phase, the maximum volume to be occupied by dispersed phase should not go beyond a percentage which is 74. That is, in order to keep it in this remaining stable form, to have no concept of phase inversion in the system, then the internal phase should never go beyond 74%, that is the maximum permissible limit. If it crosses 74%, then phase inversion is going to happen. Second reason could be by addition of electrolyte. Now electrolyte will bring in coalescence of the emulsifier. Now because of this, when we go on adding more electrolyte into the preparation, we will see that phase inversion has been adapted in the preparation. Third reason for which phase inversion is seen in an emulsion preparation is with respect to changing the emulsifier type. If we are not adding, this is mainly with respect to soap emulsions. If we are not selecting the right kind of emulsifier, we may not get the type of emulsion which we desire. Now generally it is because the emulgent which has been selected, if it is not appropriate, it may bring in change in degree of ionization. So when change in degree of ionization is seen, phase inversion is also going to be seen in the preparation. And one more ultimate reason, as already being specified with respect to cracking and creaming, it is temperature. So temperature has a great influence whether we talk in context of cracking, creaming or phase inversion. So temperature is a very important criteria because this is going to affect the solubility of emulsifier, and thereby HLB value. HLB value stands for hydrophile lipophile balance. So this gets disturbed. When this gets disturbed, the emulsion changes its form from one type to the other. Here to be understood is that whenever temperature is high or low, the concept is such that when temperature is high, the viscosity of system will drop. When viscosity of system will drop, solubility of dispersed phase increases. When solubility of dispersed phase increases, the value of HLB is going to be disturbed, and because of which the internal phase goes into external phase and vice versa, and phase inversion occurs. Now having understood the various problems which may bring in phase inversion, let's look into what is the strategy to avoid it or how we can overcome phase inversion. First approach could be that keeping the dispersed phase between 30 to 60%. As already specified, the dispersed phase can be maximum up to 74%. It is advisable that whenever we are finalizing the quantities, one should keep the dispersed phase between 30 to 60% of the total preparation. In that context, the calculation has to be done correctly such that the dispersed phase volume does not exceed this range. Second approach could be storing the emulsion in a cool place. This is very important because temperature, we have already discussed the influence of temperature on all the three instability aspects of emulsions. and the other approach is using suitable and an appropriate emulsifying agent in optimum concentration. So here we have to strategize that whenever we are formulating an emulsion, we have to select the right emulsifier and the right concentration. Now, having understood these concepts, to summarize in general about emulsion dosage forms, this being a very important category under liquid in liquid type meant for oral use, we basically talk that emulsions are thermodynamically unstable, but they are choice systems. Whenever the medicament is oily in nature, we intend it to be administered as emulsions. We have already understood that emulsions can be given orally, which is the route of choice. It can also be applied externally, and also it can be injected. So since we have the conventional approach to go with oral administration, we are emphasizing in dispensing pharmacy with regard to oral emulsions. So once oral emulsions have to be understood, we have to understand that these are thermodynamically unstable. So what should be our strategy to prepare? And these have to be prepared extemporaneously. Having understood this, first we have identified what can be the approaches or types of emulsions by which we can prepare emulsion systems, either oil in water type or water in oil type. Next, we understood that what kind of emulsifying agents we have to pick from. It's a broad variety of emulsifiers which can be used, and a suitable emulsifier has to be selected. So if we are right in connecting the terminologies of what is the emulsifier, what should be the method of preparation, and having understood what should be the criteria for selection, keeping in mind what kind of stability issues we can see with emulsions, it is definitely going to lead to a stable formulation if we are taking all these criteria into account while formulating emulsion dosage form. So this concludes the concept of discussion on emulsions and the strategies of stability and the approaches to overcome the stability issues. Thank you.